This lecture is presented by John Moffat of Open Tuition. For other free lectures, visit opentuition.com.
Let's look at question 4 now of the September-December 2015 hybrid exam for paper F5. So make sure you've downloaded it from the ACCA website, that you've got the question in front of you. Let's look at the requirements. Part A, calculate the weighted average contribution to sales ratio for cardio, 4 marks. Now I've yet to look at the figures obviously, but in principle that should be easy. It's fairly standard. B, calculate the margin of safety in dollars revenue for cardio. Again, the term margin of safety you should be very familiar with. C, using the graph paper provided, assuming the products are sold in a constant mix, draw a multi-product break-even chart for cardio, label fully both axes, any lines drawn on the graph and the break-even point. And D, explain what would happen to the break-even point if the products were sold in order of the most profitable products first. All right, let's go back and start working through part A. Cardio manufactures 3 types of fitness equipment: treadmills, cross trainers and rowing machines. The budgeted sales prices and volumes for the next year are as follows. So you've got there the selling price per unit, presumably, and the number of units. We're also given a standard cost card for each product: material, labour, variable overheads. And then that little bit below, labour costs are 60% fixed and 40% variable. General fixed overheads, excluding these labour costs, are expected to be 55,000. So fortunately, the question, it's fairly short, there's not much to read, so we shouldn't get lost. Now, they want the weighted average contribution to sales ratio, so the first thing we're going to need to do, of course, is let's work out the contribution per unit for each of the 3 products, T, C and R. We know the selling price. For contribution, we need to subtract the variable costs. Well, material, you certainly expect to be variable, 430, a unit, 500, 360. Labour, had they not said anything, I would of course expected that to be variable, but there was that line below. Labour costs are 60% fixed and 40% variable. So for contribution, we want the variable bit. So for T, 40% of 220 is 88. For C, 40% of 240 is 96. And for R, 40% of a labour cost of 190 is 76. Finally, variable overheads, 110, 120, 95. Giving total variable costs for T of 8, 4, 2, 1. I think 628 for T. For C, 620,716, and for R, 360, 4, 5, 5, 5, 531. And therefore the contribution per unit for T, 1600 minus 628 is 972. For C, $1084, and finally for R, 869. If you've watched the other lectures, I've said so many times, make sure your workings are neat. In the middle of an exam, anybody can make a silly addition mistake or a subtraction mistake. And of course, if you got any of these figures wrong, everything that follows will be wrong. But you don't lose marks twice. If you've got, I'm sorry, and I'm in a sense wasting time, but if I'd accidentally got 969 for R, all right, I'd lose half a mark here, but I'd get full marks for the remaining bits if I did them correctly on my figures. And secondly, a silly little mistake like that is just an addition or subtraction mistake. It's only half a mark, provided they can see what you're trying to do. I've set that out nicely. It's obvious that I'm doing it the right way. And because of that, it would get most of the marks for that bit, even if there was an arithmetic mistake. However, that is correct, but we're not there yet. It says calculate the weighted average CS ratio, contribution to sales. And if you remember, there are two ways you could do it, and which way wouldn't matter here to get the marks. One way you could do it is you could do the CS ratio for each product separately, first of all. Now, I'm not going to do it this way, but for instance, T, CS ratio, contribution as a percent of sales, for T would be, I think, 60.75%. Well, you could do that for each of the three, and then take a weighted average, but you'd have to weight them by the total sales revenue. The total sales revenue for T, 420 units at $1,600 dollars each, and then take a weighted average. The alternative, and I personally think the quickest, and certainly here the fastest, would be instead of doing it for each individually and then taking an average, to just work it out directly from the totals. So I'll show what I mean in 1 second, but I think this is the quickest. If they'd actually asked for the separate CS ratios first, then certainly work them out separately and then take an average. But better here, to get the overall CS ratio, let's work out the total contribution and the total revenue, and then we can work it out directly. So the total budgeted contribution, T, there's 420 units. The contribution per unit, we just worked out, is 972. In addition, there's C, 400 units, contribution of 1084. And for R, 380 units, contribution per unit 869. So the total, and as so often it now becomes speed on your calculator, 400 times 1084 380 times 869. I get 1172,060. For the CS ratio, we're going to divide by the total revenue. So it's 420 of T at 1,600 selling price per unit, 400 of C at 1,800, 380 of R at 1,400, which gives me total revenue, excuse me, 420, 1,600, 400 times 1,800, 380 times 1,400. I get 1924. Boom, boom, boom. And so having got the total budgeted contribution, total budgeted revenue, the contribution to sales ratio, the CS ratio, contribution divided by sales, which you can either leave as a decimal or a percentage, but if I put it as a percentage, it's 60.92%. So there we are, there's part A, which I think was straightforward enough. There wasn't much to read up above, and you have your reading time, obviously, for that. Otherwise, as I said, it really, really is speed on calculator. What about part B? It wants the margin of safety. Well, let's make sure I get 1 mark by just making sure I write down what it is. The margin of safety can be measured in different ways, but here it specifically says in dollars revenue. And so, to see how much safety we've got if things go wrong, it's the total budgeted revenue which I know I may as well fill in straight away. We worked it out here. It's 1924. The revenue drops, contribution drops, profit drops, and so on, but minus the break-even revenue. So I need to work out break-even revenue, and then we can do the margin of safety. But by having written that down first, at least I've got a mark, even if something now goes wrong. I'll leave a space. Let's work out break-even revenue, and then I'll come back and calculate the figure. How am I going to get break-even revenue? Well, again, something so standard and something you must have learned. If not, go back and watch the relevant lecture. But for break-even revenue, break-even, having got the CS ratio, it's the total fixed costs divided by the CS ratio. Now, we've worked out the CS ratio in part A. But what are the total fixed costs? It's 60% of the labour for all those units. And in addition, there's that mention of 55,000. So the total fixed costs, for T, there are 420 units. The fixed cost per unit will be 60% of the labour of 220, which is 132. In addition, for C, there are 400 units. Labour's 240 a unit, but 60% is fixed. So 60% of 240, there's 144 fixed costs. And for R, 380 units we're budgeting on. Labour is 190 a unit, of which 60% is fixed, which is 114. So I'll multiply up in a minute, but there are the labour fixed costs. In addition, very last line of the question, there are general fixed overheads at 55,000. So I'll work that out in one moment, but we're going to divide that total by the CS ratio of 60.92%. So, get more calculator speed. Let's work out the total fixed costs. 420 times 420 times 132 plus 400 times 144 plus 380 times 114 plus 55,000. I get 211,360. And if we divide by the CS ratio, 0.6092, it gives me a break-even revenue of 346,947. And why did I want that? Well, remember, it was the margin of safety we were after. Currently, we're budgeting on revenue of 1.924 million. If the revenue does drop, it's still going to be profitable, provided it doesn't drop below 346,947. So the margin of safety, the difference, is 157,7053. So I don't know, I mean, not many marks, obviously. It's all a bit of a rush. We've only got 7 marks so far. But it's like everything. You've got to be so happy with all the topics, to have studied them properly, that there's not much time wasted thinking, oh, what is margin of safety, or how do I get break-even revenue? It's got to be very much boom, boom, boom. Provided you've got those things at your fingertips. So much of it is just speed on the calculator. Anyway, we're not there yet. What about C? Using the graph paper provided, and assuming the products are sold in a constant mix, draw a multi-product break-even chart for cardio. Now, forgive me, I haven't got a graph paper on this screen, so I'm not going to do one precisely. We'll go through what it is and how I plot the lines and so on. In the exam, obviously, you must use a ruler. And remember, you must use black ink. If you're unsure about yourself, by all means do it in pencil, but when you're happy you've got the right lines, then go over them with black ink. However, also though, appreciate it does ask for a break-even chart. Most of the textbooks, I must admit my lecture, concentrate more on the profit volume chart. But be careful, they could have asked for profit volume. Here they asked for break-even. And if you remember, a break-even chart has 2 main lines. We show one line showing how the revenue would change with the number of units. We show another line showing how the total costs will change with the number of units. And where they cross is break-even. Let's do it. And again, please, mine won't be precise. I haven't got graph paper or ruler. I'm not going to waste time. But I will make sure we have enough here to be clear what we're doing. For the break-even chart, and head it up, break-even chart. Along the bottom axis, we're going to show the sales units. I'll fix scale shortly, but we'll show the sales units. And of course, as we sell more and more units, we'll get more and more revenue, and there'll be more and more costs. So along the other axis, we're going to show dollars. I said a minute ago, we've really got 2 main lines. We've got a line showing how the revenue will increase. Obviously, if we sell no units with no revenue, which is supposed to be there, but you can't see, as we sell more units, we'll get more revenue. There'll be a line going upwards. Well, how shall I fix the axes? The easiest way, or the best way here, is we did work out earlier what the total revenue would be for the total number of units. We worked out that if we sell the budgeted units, we'll get 1924 revenue, 1.924 million. And how many units would that be? budgeted units, 420 of C, T rather, 400 of C, 380 of R. In total, that's how many? Dear, oh dear, 1,200 units. So if we sell 1,200 units, we already knew that the total budgeted revenue $1,924. And so to fix our axes, to make sure we get a nice graph that fits on and a nice big graph, we simply need to make sure that units go up to 1,200 and that revenue goes up to 1.9 million. So I say mine's not accurate. You had graph paper in the exam, but if the units go up to 1,200, so roughly that's 600, roughly that's 300, that's 900. So I need units to go to 1,200. I need the revenue to go up to 1.9 million. Well, I'll have it go up to 2 million. So 1 million is about there. 1.5 million is here. 500,000 is there. Well, now I can do the line for the total revenue. If there are no units, there's no revenue. If there's 1,200 units, it's 1.924. So 1,200, 1.924 is going to be about there. In the exam, you must have a ruler with you and do it properly, and I haven't got one. But joining them up a straight line, oops, that would be the line showing the total revenue. And do label it. It specifically said, label both axes. I've done that, dollars and sales units. Label any lines drawn on the graph. Well, this line is the total revenue. And there will be marks just for the labelling. So my line's right, but even if the line was wrong, or even if I was running out of time and just drew any old line, there'll be marks for the labelling. In the same way that I need to draw a line for total costs. And as is standard with a break-even chart, we need to show two costs in that however many we sell, we've got fixed costs. And we worked out earlier the total fixed costs. I worked it out here. It was 211,360. And so we'll be spending 211,000 however many we produce. So there's 250, 211 is about there. So by definition, the fixed costs, 211, whatever it came to. In addition, we've got variable costs. If there are no units, there's no variable cost. We've only got the fixed cost. But as we produce more units, we've got the variable costs as well. Well, how will I do that? I think the easiest is if I work out what the total costs are if we have 1,200. And I think we've done it. Did we not work out earlier that on the budgeted sales, we worked out contribution, not costs. Anyway, I can do it. It won't take a moment. But help me. The variable cost, 628, 716 and 531. So the total variable costs, I'll have to wind up again in a minute, but there's 420 of T, there's 400 of C, 380 of R, And what were the variable costs? 628, 716 and 531. 628, 716, I hope I'm remembering correctly, 531. Which gives me a total of 751,940. In addition, we've got the fixed costs. I did a moment ago of 200 and something. 211,360. So the total budgeted cost sorry. So I hope you're following me here. The total, to draw the line, I'm trying to work out the total cost for 1,200 units. We budgeted on 1,200 units. The total cost, the total budgeted cost, the variable cost plus the fixed, a total of 963,300. So 1,200 units, 963. Again, I said before I can't be accurate, it's about there. Sorry, 1,200 units, beg your pardon. 963 is about here. Join them up. That line there is giving the total costs. It's the fixed costs plus the variable. The total is there. Well, again, label the lines, we've done that. And label the break-even point. Well, of course, when revenue is greater than costs, we're making a profit. When revenue is less than costs, we're making a loss. Break even is this point here. And so the break even units you could read off on the bottom axis. The break even revenue you could read off the side axis, but there we are. Now, we're not expected to read off the graph clearly. There will be marks in the exam for accuracy, I've already said. Clearly use the graph paper, use a ruler. But so importantly, this combination of being neat and labelling, as you were specifically asked. Incidentally, just out of interest, even though my graph was obviously not accurate, does it look sensible? What did I work out as the break-even point? Break-even revenue was 347,000. I mean, I'm in a position to read it off, but at least it looks reasonable. If I'd have drawn a graph and break-even came to 1.2 million or something, then it'd be perfectly obvious something had gone wrong. If I had time, I'd go back and check. If I didn't have time, at least I would have made the point that, it couldn't possibly be correct. Anyway, there's part C. Finally, only 2 marks, but it should be an easy 2 marks, whether you've done the earlier bits, finished the earlier bits or not. Explain what would happen to the break-even point if the products were sold in order of the most profitable products. Do appreciate that graph there is assuming that if we do sell fewer units, we're budgeting on 1,200 in total. This is showing what happens if we only sold 600 in total, 300 in total, and so on. But all the way through, it is assuming that we sell them in the same ratio as budgeted. So if we sell 1,200, there's the revenue. If we only sold 600 in total, half, we're assuming it would be half of each of them. Well, D doesn't expect you to demonstrate on the graph or do any more numbers. But if you did sell the most profitable product first, so if you only sold 100 units, don't sell a bit of all of them, just sell one of the products, what would happen? Well, you'd break even sooner. And so the answer is quite simple. Simply that if we did sell them in order of most profitable, the break even would occur earlier. And what I mean by earlier is fewer units at lower revenue. And that's it for 2 marks. I mean, I'm not going to say any more there if you're unsure about what I mean. As always, watch the free lectures on cost volume profit analysis. All right, that was question 4. Just one question left in the hybrid paper.